Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to try and unpack a really tough question. Why does Pakistan seem to face one economic crisis after another? And why do the usual fixes never seem to last? We're diving into an analysis from Dawn.com that argues the real problem isn't just about the money. It's about power, it's about rules, and it's about who's holding who accountable.
Okay, let's start with this quote because it really gets to the heart of it. The author, Tariq Kosa, is telling us that when we see all those headlines about bailouts and budget deficits, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. The real story, the reason these crises keep coming back, is buried much deeper than any spreadsheet can ever show you. All right, so first up, let's get to the core of the issue. The story we usually hear is all about financial missteps or, shocks from the global economy. But this analysis argues that if you really want to understand why Pakistan's economy is so fragile, you have to look past the numbers. You have to look at the very machinery of how the country is actually run. Now, that word cumulative is so important here. This isn't about one bad decision or a single policy gone wrong. Think of it more like a slow, steady erosion of the systems that are supposed to keep things fair and predictable. When power becomes discretionary, meaning it's up to whoever's in charge instead of following clear rules, and the watchdogs are asleep at the wheel, well, the whole economic foundation starts to get really, really unstable. And that leads us right into a key piece of evidence, a recent and pretty groundbreaking report from the IMF. Now, for the first time, this report gives a really detailed diagnosis that shifts the focus. It moves away from just looking at the economic numbers and puts the spotlight right where it belongs, on the state of governance and corruption. And this right here? This is the core diagnosis. The report isn't just pointing a finger at a few bad apples. It's describing a systemic weakness, a situation where the whole system, the very way the government is set up, actually makes corruption feel, well, normal. It's a system that prefers secret handshakes over transparent processes and who you know over what the rules say. And you can see these symptoms popping up everywhere. Look at this list. When you have fragmented authority, no one's really in charge, which is how state-owned companies can just bleed money with zero consequences. Then you've got politicized appointments, where loyalty trumps competence, and you end up with the wrong people running really important institutions. This all feeds a culture of rent-seeking, which is basically just powerful people using the system to get rich themselves instead of creating actual value for the country. And the endgame, a compromised legal system. So compromised that, as you see in that last point, businesses don't even trust the courts anymore. How can you expect any serious long-term investment when that's the reality? So if that's the grim diagnosis, what's the prescription? What's the cure? Well, the IMF report didn't just point out the problems, it also laid out a treatment plan. And on the surface, it's packed with sensible, practical reforms that look like a pretty clear path forward. And the recommendations, they all make a lot of sense, right? This is straight out of the good governance playbook. Things like e-procurement to make government contracts transparent, simplifying regulations so it's not a nightmare to do business, strengthening anti-money laundering laws. This is all standard stuff. But there's a catch. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's the puzzle that the report itself kind of hints at but doesn't fully solve. If we know what needs to be done, and the solutions are so logical, so obvious, why are we stuck in the same cycle over and over again? And that brings us right here to why these reforms fail. The answer, it seems, lies in this massive, massive gap between the neat, tidy plans drawn up by experts and the messy, complicated political reality on the ground. And wow, this slide just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? A tale of two realities. On one side, you have the official plan. It's sensible, it's technocratic, it's a clean blueprint. But on the other side, you have the on-the-ground reality of constant political meddling and powerful informal networks that can water down, divert, or just completely kill any real progress. Because these reforms aren't just technical adjustments, they are deeply political, and they threaten the people who benefit from the broken system. This is where the analysis we're looking at really makes its key point. The argument is that the IMF's prescription, as logical as it is missing the one secret ingredient that could actually make the whole thing work, a truly empowered and engaged civil society. So what's the big omission? Well, while the IMF report does mention non-state actors, it kind of treats them as an afterthought, not as central players in the solution. The author argues this is a huge oversight. Think about it. Without public pressure from citizens, from independent journalists, from advocacy groups, there's no outside force to keep the process honest and keep things on track.
So, what could civil society actually do? Well, the author lays out four really critical roles here. First, they can be a watchdog, tracking the promises and calling it out when things go off the rails. Second, they can translate all that complex, bureaucratic jargon into plain English that people can actually understand and talk about. Third, they can provide real-world feedback to policymakers so that reforms are actually based on people's lived experiences. And finally, they can help prevent corruption by literally monitoring projects on the ground and pushing for fair policies. So, when you put it all together, to get from this endless cycle of fragile recoveries to something that actually lasts, something durable, the whole approach has to change. It just can't be another top-down, technical fix handed down from on high. And for civil society to even have a chance to play its part, it needs an enabling environment. And these things you see here, they're not just nice to haves, they are absolutely non-negotiable. You need guaranteed access to information. You need to protect free speech. You need real, actual ways for people to be consulted. Any move that weakens transparency, like, for example, making it easier for officials to hide their wealth, that's a move in the exact opposite direction. And this, right here, this is really the key takeaway from our entire explainer today. You can get a bailout, you can stabilize the currency for a few months, sure. But if you don't fix the underlying institutions, the actual foundation of governance, that recovery will always be built on sand. It will be fragile, and you know what? Sooner or later, it will collapse. In the end, the author leaves us with this really powerful thought. The real challenge isn't just about ticking boxes on some new IMF reform plan. It's about a much deeper, more fundamental transformation, reclaiming the very idea of the state as something that's supposed to be neutral, accountable, and working for the public good, not for special interests. And that, well, that's a huge task that takes incredible political courage from the top and constant, vigilant pressure from the citizens below.